Hi, I am Verdaillia Turner, and this is Let's Talk. Today is October 31st, 2022, one day and 1 week before the elections in the great state of Georgia. Today, we are bringing you separate interviews of state school superintendent candidates, Richard Wood, incumbent Republican, and Alicia Thomas Searcy, Democrat challenger. Neither candidate could hear the interview or the answers for the other candidate. So once you have taken your time and listened, we hope and pray and trust that you share these interviews with everyone possible, and please subscribe. We hope that we've been of service to you. Thank you. Hi, I am Verdaillia Turner, and this is Let's Talk. And today we have with us the notable Superintendent of Education here in the great state of Georgia, Dr. Richard Woods. Hello, Dr. Woods.
Yeah, good morning.
We're going to go right into the questions so Georgia can hear everything.
All right, sure.
Tell us what distinguishes you from the opposition.
Well, I think first all what stands out is 14 years of classroom experience as a teacher, which my opponent doesn't have. During that time, I was also able to be an administrator for 8 years, serving as a principal, assistant principal, curriculum director, alternative school director, pre-K director. At school, in-school experience is very notable. It's what's driven my really my tenure up here as a state school superintendent. I think one of the things I've always tried to focus on, never forget what it's like to be a classroom teacher, because the policies and decisions that are made up in Atlanta do not necessarily affect us or impact us day to day and up at the department, but it does impact our teachers, and we have to be mindful of that because that's where our kids are. And our focus, continues to be on our children. We've got to do our very best to make sure that they have great academic opportunities to be able to succeed for life, and and we're looking to prepare them for life. So, yeah, I think that experience is a big standout because how do you make decisions when you haven't ever been in the classroom?
Okay. Last Monday, well, today is Halloween, but last Monday, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I think that you were holding the paper, talked about Georgia schools. Let's just hold it up for the camera. They're stable on the NAEP test. And tell us a little bit about the NAEP test and how do you account for Georgia scores being stable on the NAEP test, where so many other states' scores are plummeting.
Yeah. Well, the NAEP is referred to as our nation's report card. It's basically a survey test. Not every student will take it in the state of Georgia or within the grade levels that are mentioned. It is it's a test that we use to kind of gauge where we are. It is somewhat interesting that when you look at our highest performing state, which is Massachusetts, traditionally, roughly about 50% of their kids are actually passing. So you have to be careful when you look at tests and and looking at scores. What does it actually mean? It's very hard to actually move up and down on the NAEP. To be honest, when you look at a 1 or 2 point move is fairly significant if you're watching that. But for Georgia, I think I'm very proud of our teachers. Without them and the work they did, Georgia would not be where we are. I appreciate Governor Kemp allowing the districts to make decisions to stay open. And most of our districts were open. We had kids, in schools. We did have challenges during the pandemic, adjusting to, Department of Health and, rolling quarantines, spacing, and really for some teachers, how to become a virtual teacher overnight. We were not necessarily trained to do that. I tell people, I said, I don't think any teacher took a pandemic 101 class in school. I think for what they did and what they were able to do to keep our grades stable, it's a testament to who they are. At the end of the day, when you look collectively, not only looking at NAEP, but also we beat the national average when it comes to ACT and SAT scores, highest graduation rate in our state's history this year, and milestones was fairly stable as well. So what we did, we identified where we need to focus and put our efforts, and the odds that we are facing now are not insurmountable. But that is like due to the hard work and the efforts of our teachers, what they went through, and so my hat's off to them.
Thank you. If you are reelected, this is for Georgia to know,
Okay.
the superintendent will be representing 1.7 million public school students. That's a diverse population too. 219 school districts, so excluding your own home county and excluding metropolitan, what I mean by that, Fulton, Gwinnett, and DeKalb. Give us an example of a school district that you deem is doing a great job, and tell us why you think it's doing a great job.
Well, I think if you look at one that is not a charter system, Webster, the Webster School District, is extremely good down there. They compete with a state charter school down in that area. So, to make sure that they're maintaining a quality of education and still be focused, maintaining, options for their kids when they get nothing else extra, based on a charter district. If you look at other charter districts or other school districts across the state that are doing well, Union County, I was just up there, and what they are offering their children is phenomenal, especially in the area of CTAE. Fitzgerald High School, again, where I graduated but did not work. Definitely with their new school, I think putting an emphasis on career tech. We're seeing a lot of innovation. Again, going back to Union County, their career area is not just servicing Union County, but they're working collectively with towns and actually working with a district in one of the Carolinas. So we're, servicing students not only in Georgia, but also, outside the state as well.
Because we do run across the border.
Yeah, going across the border. So we're sharing the good of Georgia with one of our sister states. So I'm very pleased with those opportunities.
Well, I'm going to throw this in. This is not here
Sure.
on the paper, because most of these questions have come from a myriad of citizens, retired voters, some folk who don't vote that will be voting this time, teachers, etc. Tell us what you think about the performing arts in Georgia and the visual arts, and how that is germane to our children's success in schools overall, and how we are developing the arts in the schools.
Well, I'm very pleased with the arts. I think, I won a national award for my support of the arts. It was one of the things that I found it was very important. Mr. Hudson was my art teacher, and I could have actually been an art teacher. So it was a choice between, social studies or history or art. I chose history, but, when I was teaching down in Irwin County, I incorporated a lot of art in there. But art is essential. I think, looking at Georgia, even just walking up for this interview, we had a film production just down the street.
I saw it,
Yeah.
yes.
So, so I think that, it's, offering, millions of dollars, revenue and opportunity for our kids. But what you find out is that, kids that are involved with the arts, whether it's band, drama, dance, music, their likelihood of success and being very successful exponentially goes up. So we definitely want to support the arts. I think one of the ways in which we've done that prior to coming up here, we did have STEM education, which was science, technology, engineering, and math, but we added STEAM education as well. So I'm all in with the arts. I think it's essential for our kids to have those opportunities.
So look out, world. Look out for Georgia.
Yes.
If you are re-elected, you will inherit, well, you already have one, a state-appointed Board of Education. Tell us the pros and cons of having a state-appointed board, and what can you do outside of the board?
Well, I think any challenge you have is that all these individuals are appointed by the governor. So that is an independent, appointment process. I do appreciate Governor Kemp. He's, appointed some really good people to the board. But like education, when you look at this position, there's not a lot of inherent power necessarily. You have to work with a lot of people to get things done. Whether it's policy, working with the State Board of Education, or across the street working with members of the General Assembly, working with our teacher ed groups, business and industry. So, it's kind of juggling a lot of hats, but, relationship building is, something I think is very important. And so, my job is to make sure that, what the people of Georgia have elected me to do, I will continue to pursue that. But recognizing also that in order to get it done, I do have to, shake a lot of hands and have a lot of,
Yeah.
conversations with people. So, it's very doable, and and I can say that because of what we've been able to accomplish over the past 8 years. And sometimes it's a challenge, but good things that are worth fighting for definitely don't come without a little bit of challenge associated with
Well,
it.
this is a follow-up to that. A lot of people work 8-hour days, 40 hours per week. Of course, some people go over that. How many hours do you think you put in per week?
Oh, well, I was, of course, during this time of season, I'm probably close to 70 or 80. We don't get a whole lot of time off, but on average, I would say at least a minimum of 50 hours a week, which is not unusual. I mean, I travel quite a bit. There's a lot of requests for me to go out. And of course, that means, all parts of Georgia. I don't represent just the metro area, but being state school superintendent, that means north, south, east, and west. And Georgia's a big state. So a lot of times that means, I'm on the road quite a bit. But, it's well worth the sacrifice and effort.
Hey, y'all, and he's a social studies teacher. I am one too. But Georgia is the largest state east of the Mississippi, so bear that in mind. Okay, approximately 25% of Georgia's teachers, out of about 120,000 of us, have 21 plus years of service in.
Yes.
And some teachers may be entitled to Social Security if they moonlighted, worked other jobs, had other careers, or they had spouses that they could get the benefits from. Georgia is one of 15 states in the country that is under what we call the windfall elimination provision. And for the public to know, that came about, I think, 1983. And actually, people don't know about it until they retire. You have state firefighters, policemen, etc., under this windfall elimination provision. And some work is going on in Congress about this right now. So if a teacher or state worker is entitled to state retirement or TRS, they'll get those benefits, but their Social Security benefits is based on a formula. Some people say, all right, let's keep it in, it's double dipping. Others say it's not fair. Let me hear your opinion.
Well, I think when you look at teachers and state employees, well, they paid into both. In some cases, I know my wife just recently retired, and so she paid Social Security, and she also paid in the TRS. Well, when you invest in both, you made a contract. And that means that with that contract that you agreed to pay into a system, but you expect something in return when it comes to retirement age. So I think that we need to make sure that we're protecting our individuals. I don't see it as double dipping because, as I shared, when you invest and pay into both, then you're entitled to what your investment allows you to get. And I think for teachers, again, going into it, I mean, we're not going into this for pay. Our profession is not something that we expect to become millionaires where we go out. But I think, what a fair day's work, you get a fair day's wage and a fair day's retirement. And so I think that we need to make sure that we're protecting our teachers and their investment, and for the time that they have shared, then they are entitled to everything that is due to them, based on the law. And we want to make sure we don't undercut any of our teachers. I think about the day in which we had National Board Certified, where Georgia made that commitment to pay teachers and then pulled back.
Right.
So like I said, I didn't think that was fair at the time because, again, when you make a contract, contracts are binding.
That's right. And I'm so glad this leads me into a question that's off the top of my head. It's not on this paper. While we were getting ready this morning, I thought about my second grade teacher, Mrs. Williams, and she taught us a song. Spare me now.
Sure.
And she would say, this for Halloween.
Yeah.
And she would say, Halloween is coming soon, we'll be dressed in funny clothes, and then you'll see pumpkins in the windows. Y'all know this is not my career. Shining bright. Oh, we'll have a good time on Halloween night. Tears came to my eyes because as I drove from my home in Stone Mountain, and I was going through the Decatur School District, and I saw the young people and the parents in costume. I thought about that song 60 years ago. She taught, I'm your elder. Y'all, I was teasing him. I said I can boss him now because I'm his elder, but anyway. I would like for you to speak to the fact that every time we have a teacher shortage, the state, not only this state, all over the nation, we start to lower the standards for teachers. And we get folk in the classroom, warm bodies a lot of times, and they do the best that they can. But how can we actually attract and retain top teachers in the state, and tell us what a top teacher is, in your opinion?
Okay. Well, I think we'll start with, first, what's a top teacher? To me, I think of someone like a Miss Michaels or Miss Phillips or Coach Cox, Mr. Hudson for myself. They were individuals that first and foremost built a relationship with me. They knew who I was. They could tell when I was up. They could tell when I was down. They had that personal, connection with me. I think that, that's why I think having teachers and allow them to build relationships is the first and foremost thing they need to do. That needs. I mean, I think the old saying, people don't care how much you know until they first know how much you care. And I think that represents teachers across the board. Teachers who know their content, that are very professional with that, and have I guess a unique expertise in delivering that content, so that what they are doing is that they're allowing their students to learn, but also to apply that knowledge and see how it makes connections in the real world. And ultimately, I think what we're doing is we're preparing our young students to be leaders. I mean, they're the individuals that are going to, eventually replace us, in our fields. And so, anytime you have an individual that is making that kind of impact, showing that they care, showing that they have that connection, and all the while, teaching and learning. And in many cases, that means that students don't even know they're learning, because they just enjoy being in the presence of that teacher. They respect them. I think that going back to a good quality teacher, I think classroom management is extremely important. I think during my lifetime as a teacher, if I had 5 write-ups during my entire 14 years, that was probably a max. So I think it's extremely important to provide a safe, environment for kids, that they feel comfortable in the classroom. And looking at, for teachers, what does that mean? How do we attract them? First and foremost, we have to have our teacher staff, our current teachers, bragging on their profession. They are the best spokespeople that we have. If you want to attract and bring young people in the profession, you've got to set the model. For myself, I had a Miss Mate. She was my high school math teacher. Well, she allowed me to teach, my peers. And so I think, not knowing back then that I wanted to become a teacher, but yet she allowed me to teach the class several times. And, laying that seed, and definitely with social studies. I mean, all my high school teachers were World War II veterans. So it almost, feels like you were at the feet of Socrates, day in and day out. But I think, we have to look at doing that. But how do you make our, or encourage our teachers to brag about the profession, to go out and actively recruit? That means you have to teach them, and treat them as professionals. I think a good pay, definitely is one of the things you look at, providing them a safe and supportive environment, that they know that the leadership,
and we can do a dissertation on that.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. And I think, trying to make sure that that the leadership, supports them. I think, for myself as state school superintendent, my focus is on the classroom. That's where teachers are, that's where kids are. So, how do we take the bureaucracy away? I think one of the things we just recently had a teacher burnout report, and, trying to look at what did our teachers say? I think trying to cut back on, some of the testing, which we've done at the state level, but it's encouraging our local districts to cut back on some of their testing.
Yes.
And
we've cut out a lot too.
Yeah, so it's so I think you try to look at that, give them time to plan. because our teachers actually, they do have families as well. And so, you've got to give them time with that. I think, duty-free lunch is something that is a good thing. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to make a teacher happy.
I would think that you had my house bugged, because I would say the same thing. When I was in the classroom, if a kid brought a candy bar, I act like a prisoner. Forgot, I'm gonna get out of school, right?
Yeah.
And talking about teachers who brag about their schools, I think there's a bill named for this young man. I can't think of the name of it, but he's an outstanding coach. And he's at Smoke Rise, the new Smoke Rise in DeKalb County. His name is Terrence Scott. And I can't get a negative word. Sometimes I'm just picking at Terrence. He doesn't know I'm doing it. I said, wait a minute, Terrence. And Terrence has done a remarkable job with the students because he loves his job.
Yeah.
And teachers have to have input and know and own the profession.
Yes.
So thank you for that answer.
Sure.
Okay. Our charter schools, there are not a lot of them, somewhere in metropolitan area here. Are charter schools that are run by private companies or local boards doing a better job, in your opinion, than traditional public schools?
Of course, I'm quite biased, but I, feel that, Georgia public education is doing a good job. I think, when I've looked at many of these charter schools, there are some benefits, I guess, that, you can kind of pick and choose who attends. You can, set some things, but as far as what they can offer to our kids, you can't beat public education. Our career tech program in the state of Georgia is second to none. And that's a big part of, the workforce that's out there.
That's right.
The extracurricular activities that we offer our kids, whether it's band, music, dance, drama, FFA, our student organizations, or what we call our CCSSOs, unequal to anything that's out there. So I guess I would think about with some of the charter schools, how do you scale up what we have in Georgia? And that would be extremely hard to do. I mean, a lot of these schools, they do focus on higher academics, which again is very notable. Sometimes you do have schools that might focus a little bit on the arts, but by and large, you can't beat public education in Georgia. And especially, I think, the transformation that we're seeing and what we're looking at making some adjustments. It's going to be hard to compete with us. We're offering a great service to our
Well, I'm going to add something to that.
Sure.
Talk about our special needs population and those parents and what's going on to meet the needs of our special needs population, and tell the public what we mean by special needs, categories and all.
Well, when you look at special needs, of course, a lot of that really is defined by the federal government. When you talk about the old law IDA, when we're looking at special needs, but it does range. It ranges from kids that are highly immobile and maybe almost in some cases non-responsive in a sense. In the extreme, different levels of autism. Which can be, a high functioning to a low functioning, so we deal with that. Emotional behaviors fall in that category, but also are gifted. Many people don't understand that or realize that, but gifted is also placed in that category of special needs as well. So we serve a very broad spectrum of, across the board. It's probably one of the toughest fields that we have out there, but definitely one that we think about Georgia, we're probably close to 10% of our student population being special need. So we have a very high special need population. It is one of the fields that we have as far as teachers. The amount of paperwork is just astronomical. And, again, we constantly, are having discussions and trying to work with the federal government to make it less bureaucratic and, try to actually meet the needs of those kids. And so my hat's off to all of our teachers in that area. They do a great job. Working with families. Probably you have one of the highest engagements with parents being involved with our special needs. One of the things I think we can improve is making sure that our parents know what their rights are in that engagement area, because it can be quite overwhelming, and especially when you come to terms, I guess, and realize that my kid needs some extra help. and what does that look like? And because that's a period of adjustment as well, and trying to navigate that, because you think that when your child is born, everything's going to be great. And, unfortunately, some of our children do have some deficits. Doesn't mean they can't learn. Doesn't mean they can't be successful.
True.
And I think we have to make sure that we always focus on that they are not a group of students that we just push out to the side and just say, hey, we'll get them across, the finish line at graduation without any meaningful education. But we're making sure that they can be successful, and we're seeing a lot of great intent and really exposure to kids up there. Again, just mentioning Union County, doing a great, service. I think they work with Snap-on. And Snap-on actually is hiring special needs kids to help assemble some of their products and just saying, hey, you can have a great life. And these students actually come out being some of your best workers
Cherokee County is doing some good stuff with them also.
Yeah.
And I have 2 special need nephews, and they're grown now.
Yeah.
And I could not, as a regular classroom teacher, appreciate not only the money that's spent and the apparatus and the tools, but the jobs that these teachers do until it hit home.
Yeah.
And speaking of money, and it takes money to run education. Our most valuable assets are our children. I think we're going to agree on that.
Yes.
But I think depending upon the county of residence, I may be wrong, age determines whether or not people can opt out of local school taxes. It used to be 65. I'm just thinking of my county, DeKalb. Now it's age 70. They can opt out. Give us your opinion about opting out of taxes. Should it be based on income or based on age? What do you think?
Well, I would say, I mean, to me, it's based on need. But I would say that for my wife and I, we have no children. So we've always paid local taxes, SPOS taxes, to support education. For myself, I've always seen it as an investment. I don't see it as something that, as a have to, I want to, or something the government says. I try to think that, I think for all of us, we want the next generation to be better off than where we were. And so I think, for my small part, what we look at, I think that, and I understand as you get fixed incomes, it does become more challenging with that. But for myself, it is what local districts decide and with that. But I think that, you definitely don't want to necessarily undercut, our teaching profession, our opportunities for kids. I think if you look at anything, it may be something that's based on income, would probably maybe be some dividing area if you looked at that. But overall, I think you really have to look at, why are we doing this? And as I shared for myself, I don't foresee myself, ever speaking out, against a tax or something of that nature. When for myself, when it comes to education, and again, I'm speaking just for education in that sense. I want the best for our kids, and if it's a small price that I pay or sacrifice, then for myself, I'm always willing to do so.
And that goes back to local control.
Yes, local
thank
control.
you.
Yes.
All right, now you are a single voter yourself. Per transparency in schools, the news often shows a lot of violence in public schools.
Yeah.
And I have my own theory as to why they don't show the violence in private schools.
Yes.
So, as a voter, tell us 4 suggestions for alleviating any type of violence in schools.
Well, I think first of all, you've got to, I think, really determine why is the violence taking place. Many cases, I think, as we look at where we are right now, I think, dealing with the pandemic and things of that nature, many of my school districts, when I talk to superintendents and principals, saying that isolation definitely had a mental impact, or at least some type of emotional impact on our children. When they came back, they did not necessarily have the social skills that they did so, or needed to progress. So maybe it's an outward expression.
They learned a new way of life too.
Yes. So I think it is trying to find out what's there. But I think that when you look at a child's education, first of all, we got to make sure we're not leaving them behind. And that means, you know, for years the test drove everything. It didn't matter where a kid was,
Right.
you know, but it was like, well, I know I'm going to be graded on this year's standards, so I got to teach that. Didn't matter where the kid was.
Right.
So I think that when you set up anyone, you know, for failure, you're going to disengage them. So I think, you know, we have to look at you know, that part of the process. You have to make sure that a kid feels engaged, that I can accomplish something, you know, that I'm, you know, not a subset of kids that, you know, is doomed for failure. So I think, you know, making sure that we progress kids at an appropriate, you know, rate, and not just discard them, and maybe even look at, you know, how do we think about grades? How do we think about kids? And that progression, I think that would definitely help out, especially with the younger age. I think expanding opportunities, for years we said every child's going to a 4-year university. Well, we know that's not, you know,
Right.
the reality for a lot of kids. I mean, you can get a great career with our technical school system, or, you know, the military, or straight into the workforce. So I think providing and expanding opportunities for our kids in those areas. If you enjoy something, you're going to be engaged. If you're engaged, you're not going to be distracted to get into something that, you know, is violent. You know, I think that in some cases we still don't know what is social media and what is the impact there. You know, in some cases I would say it is a nice tool, but does it cause more harm, especially for our young people? You know, I think of things where, you know, they're being encouraged, I would say, very bad or deviant behavior and challenges and things of that nature through peer pressure, you know, based on some of the social platforms is not good. Cyberbullying, I mean, we're seeing that. And so, you know, parents, I think, actually, we really need to monitor what that looks like and have that support. So this is not just, I think when you look at violence, it's not just us in public education.
Right.
You know, the family has to help and support that. The community has to help and support that. So I think, you know, trying to you know, engage and provide our kids opportunities to have you know, involvement, whether it's sports, other curricular activities. Again, going back, if our kids are involved and engaged in those extracurricular activities, you know, it cuts down on violence. So we want to make sure our kids, you know, have a place. One of the things that I would say that a lot of schools are now doing, they're making sure that every single child has some type of peer associated with them, that a teacher or a member of the staff knows that child personally, and can, you know, where no one feels isolated. And so I think, you know, it is part of that relationship building. You know, going back to where we started, you know, with the interview, you know, it was extremely important because, you know, if you build that trust with those kids and have that relationship, it does cut down as well. So it's a multifaceted approach to this, not a one-size-fits-all.
Say that again, multi what?
Faceted.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
I'm throwing this in. This
Sure.
is not on the paper. Over the past, let's say, I'll go back 15 years. The way that Department of Education here in Georgia is funded, has that changed, Eddie?
No, we still have a 1985 funding formula. So we go back as far as how we receive funds is very formulaic. And I think that I was teaching in the 80s, so I know what it looked like. I mean, I was operating with a chalkboard. My technology was an overhead projector. You know,
Did you have that mimeograph machine?
I had the
with all
mimeograph machine, yeah. I had that as well. You know, and had to type my tests and papers out with an old manual typewriter with
a stencil.
With a stencil with correction tape. So, so you know, so life has changed. We didn't have smart boards. We didn't have the technology, or, you know, you go into where you have. So it's changed. We have more kids today. And I think that, you know, what we found out is, again, we are not a cookie cutter society.
Right.
And we have to realize that there has to be flexibility based on district needs, or because they're basing their needs on children, on the population
Exactly.
that they have. So,
Yes.
so you know, I think there has to be flexibility in the formula. I think one of the things, you know, we look at the past, there have been several attempts to change or alter the formula. I think we could do a better job, and maybe not necessarily trying to eat the whole elephant in one bite, but to be more specific and to do things in a gradual manner, I think would definitely help out. And so we're in talks with the governor and members of the General Assembly who, again, we have to have their nod on that and get that passed. I think if it's a little more measured, a little bit slower, but definitely having some flexibility for our districts, it can be done.
Okay. All right, now we get into the fun part. I'm patting my feet here. We're in election season.
Yes.
And during election season, surveys are more prolific. I would do them differently with my class, of course, like before class, anyway. During the heat of campaign season and election season, a lot of people are knocking on doors that want to know their opinions and et cetera. But the horses are already there. You're already on the ballot. I want you to elaborate on why you think we're still taking surveys, although we know who's running.
I think it is just part of the process, and traditionally it's been the way that people have done things. Not saying it's the correct way to do things, but tradition and bureaucracy and have a way of driving things. Innovation is not necessarily the driver. You look at people who have done this for a long time, and it's what they feel comfortable with. Change doesn't necessarily come that easy. For us, it is what it is. Right now, my focus is just trying to, get more people to say, hey, I think you've done a good job as state school superintendent, turn out and vote. But as a way to get, with surveys as a way to get information and, hopefully what is collected can be, correctly used and appropriately used to share, with the population at large.
Okay, thank you. If you are re-elected, name the top 3 people that you will meet with and the top 3 organizations and why.
Okay. I think, collectively, of course, the governor, comes at the top. He appoints members of the Board of Education who I work with and definitely helps set the tone. I mean, he will issue a budget. So, my department is right there with it. So we want to make sure we have adequate funding and support there. I think with all of our education groups, I think is extremely important. Such as, with your organization, teachers are, it's an invaluable resource to hear from, those that we serve. Going back, how do we get teachers, on board? How do we encourage them to be the best PR that we have? What are the resources and needs? Again, just listening to a teacher the other day on Facebook. I mean, she was expressing some concerns about school discipline, that, a topic that we covered. Because I think we want to make sure we don't make policy that gets in the way of education. Many times we have seen that in the past. I've experienced that, as a teacher, as an administrator, and I think that, as you look at the next, group, of coalitions, it's extremely important to talk with kids. Ultimately that's the group we serve, and to have their voice and, with parents, business and industry as well. So, I know I've kind of expanded beyond our top 3, but, it just shows you that, education is a very diverse, and expansive, field in which relationships, are extremely important, but we touch so many different areas. When you look at the child, well, they have their needs. Parents have their needs, teachers have their needs, administrations have their needs. Or, working with our General Assembly, they have viewpoints that comes all across the state. So it's, just a balance of trying to narrow and say, let's focus on what's the best and what's the right thing for our kids and for our state.
Because you only have about 11 million folk, right?
Yes,
to
yes.
deal with. Okay.
Yes.
All right. This is the final question, and then we will let Dr. Woods talk some. Let's talk about financing of campaigns.
Yes.
All the financial reports will not be in until after the election.
Yeah.
Tell Georgia, now eliminating individual
Sure.
contributions,
Okay.
your top 3 campaign contributors and what industry or whom do they represent?
Let's see, my top 3 individuals. Trying to think. PG, I think it's Peachtree. It's a lobbyist group, but they represent many individuals across the state or representatives there. Gosh, I mean, so much of my stuff is really individual donations. Let's see, Georgia Association of Educators has given me some funding in that, and that's one of our teacher ed groups across the state.
It's GAENEA.
Yes, yes, would provide that.
And in some places we're affiliated with the NEA.
Yes, so we have that. They've again, a teacher group there. Those are the 2 that probably stand out, just with the networking that's out there. But my campaign, I would say, is unique, to say the least. It is not one where I've always received a lot of money. Typically, I've always been outfunded, to be honest. But I think so much with that is that how do you manage the money you receive? And firmly believe we've been able to do a good job with that. I mean, to me, the Lord's always provided what we've needed, day in and day out. And I think that what we've found out when we first ran, and I first ran in 2010, there's a lot of waste out there in political campaigns.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people, I think they lean on consultants and spend a lot of money there.
A lot in the media and everywhere.
Media,
oh my God.
yeah.
Yes.
So
it's a feeding frenzy. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, everybody. It's not unusual.
Man.
I get emails that they'd say, listen, if you work with us, we can make this happen. And it's a big money grab. I mean, there's a lot of money in that. But, for myself, I think a lot of people, I go back to 2018. When I tell people, I said, I had $10,000 in the primary. I had $10,000 in the general election. So I ran an entire campaign with basically $20,000. So, that's the life.
So you had those 5 loaves and fish. Huh?
Yeah, pretty much. And
okay,
the Lord multiplied with that. And so it's, like I said, money, does it help? Sure, it does help. But I think you have to be very wise on, how you spend that. But you got to have, at the end of the day, I've run against candidates that have had $500,000 in their bank account. But they didn't have a message. They didn't have anything that the people of Georgia resonated with. And ultimately, that's what you have to have. You have to have that connection with the people of Georgia to make this work.
I'm going to step off camera. Dr. Woods, it has been a pleasure having you here this morning with us. Thank you for taking your valuable time. And it's only 8 days before the fat lady sings.
Yes.
And that's not going to be me. All right. But anyway, I want you to talk to Georgia and tell us in about 3 minutes anything that you want us to know.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
Yeah. Well, again, to all the great people of Georgia, it has been my esteemed pleasure and honor to represent you over the past 8 years as State School Superintendent of Georgia. During that time, we've seen a lot of great growth, and I think that one of the things we've been able to accomplish is really depoliticizing the education system of Georgia. But instead of focusing on education being about a test, we've returned our education system to being about the children of Georgia, providing them access to wonderful areas of opportunity, whether that's our career tech program, our arts program, computer science, AB, IP, or AB and SATs and ACTs, opportunities and just different courses across the state. We've been very blessed with that. And my commitment continues to be the same, that each and every day, we're going to be focused on preparing our kids for life, thinking about what the next 8 years looks like, we want to make sure we expand our kids' opportunities for graduation, not only for, higher ed or a 4-year degree, but also with career tech, military, or straight into the workforce. Georgia continues to be a leader with that. But in addition to that, first and foremost, when we think about both teachers and students and anyone who steps into our schools, school safety will be number one. We've got to have an environment in which our kids and anyone who steps on our campuses feels safe, feels protected, so that we can focus on learning. And we'll continue to work with our governor and the General Assembly and members with law enforcement in our local districts to make that happen. But also, as we think about that, making sure that our teachers feel respected, making sure that they have time to teach. How do we improve that environment down at the school level to make them feel respected, to give them time to build relationships with their kids, to have input on their profession and what it means for them to be successful and how we at the state level can do so. We have 181 school districts throughout the state of Georgia, and so there's a lot of diversity as we engage with that. And that means education looks a little different. And so we have to be flexible at the state level, and we have to be at our best so our districts can be at their best. Once again, it's been a pleasure to be with you today. I thank you for the opportunity to speak, face to face, somewhat virtually. But I look forward to serving you as state school superintendent over the next 4 years. If you wish to learn more, please go to the website woodsforsuper.com. And I look forward to earning your vote once again in a few short days on November 8th. Thank you very much.